Who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up thy loins now like a man, for I will demand of thee, and thou shalt answer me. Thus speaks the voice from the whirlwind, challenging the limits of mortal understanding concerning the divine will and wisdom. These words herald one of the most profound narratives of faith, suffering, and redemption, the story of Job. Long ago, in the land of Uz, there dwelt a man named Job. He was renowned for being blameless and upright, one who feared God and shunned all evil. His integrity and faithfulness set him above his contemporaries. Job was exceedingly blessed with great substance and a large household. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters who brought him much joy. His possessions were vast: 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys, together with a great number of servants. Indeed, he was the greatest of all the people of the East. His children oft held feasts in their homes, inviting their sisters to join in the merriment. Yet Job, ever mindful of their spiritual condition, would rise early after each feast to offer burnt sacrifices for each child, saying, "It may be that my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." This practice of intercession was a consistent part of Job's life, reflecting his deep devotion to God and care for his family. One day, the heavenly hosts presented themselves before the Lord, and among them came Satan. The Lord spoke unto Satan, saying, "From whence comest thou?" Satan answered, "From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it." Then the Lord said, "Hast thou considered my servant Job? There is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth God and shunneth evil." But Satan, doubting Job's devotion, replied, "Doth Job fear God for naught? Hast thou not made a hedge about him, and about his house, and about all that he hath on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. But put forth thine hand now, and touch all that he hath, and he will surely curse thee to thy face." The Lord then granted Satan authority over Job's possessions, saying, "Behold, all that he hath is in thy power. Only upon himself put not forth thine hand." Calamity befell Job with alarming swiftness. A messenger came and reported, "The oxen were ploughing, and the donkeys were feeding beside them when raiders fell upon them, carrying them away and smiting the servants with the sword. I alone am escaped to tell thee." Before the words had fully registered, another messenger arrived. "The fire of God is fallen from heaven, and hath burned up the sheep and the servants. I alone am escaped to tell thee." While he was yet speaking, a third messenger entered. Chaldeans formed 3 bands, made a raid upon the camels, and slew the servants. I alone am escaped to tell thee. Finally, the most grievous tidings came. Thy sons and thy daughters were feasting in their eldest brother's house when a mighty wind struck the 4 corners of the dwelling, and it fell upon them, and they are dead. I alone am escaped to tell thee. Overcome by sorrow, Job rent his mantle, shaved his head, and fell upon the ground in worship. In his anguish he proclaimed, "Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." In all this, Job did not sin, nor charge God with folly. Once again, Satan presented himself before the Lord, seeking to test Job yet further. "Skin for skin," he declared. "Yea, all that a man hath will he give for his life. But put forth thine hand now, and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse thee to thy face. The Lord replied, Behold, he is in thine hand, but save his life. So Satan smote Job with grievous sores from the soles of his feet unto the crown of his head. Job took a shard of broken pottery to scrape himself as he sat among the ashes. Even his wife, overwhelmed by their misery, cried out, Dost thou still retain thine integrity? Curse God and die. But Job answered, Thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. Shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall we not receive evil? In all this did not Job sin with his lips. Now when Job's 3 friends, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, heard of all the calamities that had befallen him, they conferred together and agreed to journey from their respective lands to mourn with him and to comfort him in his afflictions. As they approached from afar, they scarcely recognized him, for his body was covered in grievous sores, and his countenance was greatly changed by sorrow. Beholding his pitiful state, they lifted up their voices and wept. They rent their garments in lamentation and sprinkled dust upon their heads toward heaven, a sign of profound grief. In silence and reverence, they seated themselves upon the ground with Job, remaining thus for 7 days and 7 nights. None dared utter a word, for they perceived the depth of his anguish and knew not how to console him. In that silence, they bore witness to his suffering, sharing it as best they could by their presence alone. Thus they waited, watching Job's groans and tears, pondering the mystery of his plight, until at length he opened his mouth to speak. With a trembling voice, he lamented the day of his birth and questioned the purpose of his existence, saying, Let the day perish wherein I was born, and the night wherein it was said, There is a man-child conceived. So began the grievous discourse between Job and his companions, as they sought to understand the reasons behind his great trial, and to offer what comfort their words might afford. Yet their silence, shared in those first 7 days, testified more powerfully than any speech to the gravity of his pain and the depth of their compassion. Job's friends believed calamity was certain proof of transgression. Each spoke in turn, urging him to repent of presumed sin. Eliphaz, with initial sympathy, soon grew accusatory. Remember, I pray thee, who ever perished being innocent, or where were the righteous cut off? In his counsel he implied Job's guilt. He spoke of visions granted unto him, and warned that no mortal is pure before God. Yet his words, though cloaked in piety, hurt Job deeply. Bildad, more blunt and unyielding, hinted that Job's children had perished for their own sins. If thy children have sinned against him, and he have cast them away for their transgression. He insisted that if Job would but seek God and plead for mercy, his fortunes would be restored. His harsh words only added to Job's anguish. Zophar, the most severe, rebuked Job for his complaints and accused him of self-righteousness. Oh, that God would speak and open his lips against thee. Know therefore that God exacteth of thee less than thine iniquity deserveth. He admonished Job to repent, convinced he deserved worse than he had received. Though wounded by their accusations, Job steadfastly proclaimed his innocence. I am blameless, yet he destroyeth me. My witness is in heaven, and he that voucheth for me is on high. He challenged their narrow views, observing that often the wicked flourish while the just suffer. Tormented in body and soul, Job cried out to God, Wherefore hiddest thou thy face, and holdest me for thine enemy? Yet amid despair his faith endured. Though he slay me, Yet will I trust in him. I know that my Redeemer liveth, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. Thus did the debates lay bare the limitations of human reasoning on divine justice. Job's friends clung to a strict, transactional view of God, while Job's anguish and unwavering devotion revealed a deeper mystery. Through these heated exchanges, Job's grief was made plain, even as he held fast to his trust in God's ultimate righteousness. At length, the Lord answered Job from out of the whirlwind, demanding, "Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding. Who hath laid the measures thereof, if thou knowest? Or who hath stretched the line upon it? Whereupon are its foundations fastened? Or who laid its cornerstone, when the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy?" By such questions, God illustrated his sovereignty over all creation. He continued, "Hast thou commanded the morning since thy days began, and caused the dawn to know its place? Canst thou bind the sweet influences of Pleiades, or loose the bands of Orion? Canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth in his season? Or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons? Moving from the grandeur of the heavens to the wilderness of the earth, the Lord asked, Knowest thou the time when the wild goats of the rock bring forth? Canst thou mark when the hinds do calve? Who provideth for the raven his food, when his young ones cry unto God, and wander for lack of meat? Confronted by the immensity of divine wisdom, Job was humbled. He answered, I have heard of thee by the hearing of the ear, but now mine eye seeth thee. Wherefore I abhor myself, and repent in dust and ashes. Thus was Job brought to a deeper recognition of God's majesty, yielding himself fully to the Almighty's inscrutable will. Then the Lord spoke to Eliphaz and his companions, rebuking them for having spoken falsely concerning his ways. My wrath is kindled against thee and against thy two friends, for ye have not spoken of me the thing that is right, as my servant Job hath. He commanded them to offer up 7 bulls and 7 rams as a burnt offering, and to have Job pray for them. Job, despite all he had endured, prayed for his friends, and the Lord accepted his prayer. Following this, the Lord restored Job's fortunes, granting him twice as much as he had before. 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 donkeys. He was again blessed with 7 sons and 3 daughters, the fairest in all the land, and he gave them inheritance among their brethren. Job lived 140 years thereafter, beholding his children and his children's children unto the 4th generation. He died, old and full of days, leaving behind a testimony of unwavering faith, patience in suffering, and the sovereignty of God. The story of Job remains a timeless witness to the depths of faith amid trials, the majesty of the Almighty's purposes, and the mystery of his justice. In times of affliction or doubt, we behold in Job an enduring lesson. Even in the darkest trials, trust in God is our surest refuge and hope. Yet beyond its moral teachings, the story of Job also reminds us of the limitations of human wisdom. His friends sought to explain his suffering through their narrow views of divine justice, yet they were ultimately rebuked. Job himself, though faithful, questioned God, yearning for understanding. It was only when God spoke that Job grasped the grandeur of the Almighty's wisdom, beyond the scope of human reasoning. This narrative also serves as a testament to divine restoration. Though Job endured unspeakable loss and suffering, he was ultimately vindicated. His trials, rather than being mere punishment, became a means through which his faith was refined, His understanding deepened, and his relationship with God strengthened. It demonstrates that suffering, though mysterious, is not without purpose in the hands of the Almighty. Thus, Job's story is not only about endurance, but about transformation. It is about a journey from faith to deeper faith, from questioning to revelation, from loss to divine restoration. His story continues to inspire those who endure suffering, affirming that faith in God's wisdom and sovereignty is never in vain.